Okay, we're learning a short mimer that's connected to this week's parsha and the Teshuvah. Hopefully, we'll finish it before Yom Kippur, maybe 2 classes. It's a short mimer. It's a mimer the Rebbe said in Tafshin Mem Beis, 1982, and going into 82, 81, 82, and was given out. Not sure what year it was given out. Let's see. Okay. So Hanacha, it says here in the year Tafshin Nun Gimel, I think it came out. Okay, so the Maamar says like this. So in the pasuk of this week's parsha, today's chitas, it says Knesher your kinoi al goizlov yirachev. So we have the psukim in this week's parsha. It says. Kinesher, we start off the conversation starts off with really today's chita. It says Kichelik Hashem Amoy, Yaakov Chev Nachalasai. Then it says Yimtzeeyu. It means the Jewish people are chelik of Hashem. Our portion of Hashem means the idea of the nefesh alikis. Then it says Yimtzeeyu be'eretz midbar. God found us. I'm going to see what the idea of the mitzvah is, like something that's a lost object in the desert. And then it says Kinesher Yer Kinoi. As an eagle awakens its nest, hovering over its young chicks, Yifresh Kanafav Yikacheyu, he lifts it up over its Yisrael and carries them over his wings. Okay. So the pasuk says, Kinesher Yer Kinoi al Goizelav Yirachev. He hovers over the young chicks. It's Hine Maksiv Liomine. This pasuk, like I said before, is following. It says before that he found them in a desert, and that's following Kichelik of Ayamai, that the Jewish people are a portion of Hashem. And then after the Kinesher Yerkino, it finishes off Hashem Avaya Badad Yanchenu, that Hashem Bedad is going to be, He's alone is going to watch over the Jewish people. Like the full translation of the verses, it says Hashem Badad Yanchenu ve'enimai kel nachar. God. The Lord guides them alone, and there's no alien deity with them. Okay, we'll see what that means. That's even higher than the level of the Rahmanas. It says, "Hine the pasuk, hine pirsha pasuk v'zehu." What's the idea of the nesher? Kin nesher your kinoi, like an eagle that has compassion. Shu shakadosh baruch hu noyeg in bnei Yisrael berachmim, that the Hashem, his the way he deals, so to say. Noyeg, the way he interacts with the Jewish people, is in a way of compassion. Kamoi hanesher, just like the eagle, hamerachiv al goizalov, that hovers over his young chicks in a way of compassion. Ukapirish Rashi, and like Rashi says, he doesn't come all at once. He kind of bounces around. The eagle bounces around in a protective manner over the young eagle chicks. Kloimar sheish rachme nesher kipshuta, that the nesher represents compassion. The behaviorism of an eagle is the behavior of an animal that has compassion. We know we have animals that their character is compassion, like the eagle, and we have animals that have a very achzarius, a very severe character, like the raven. So there is compassion that's like the nesher, and then there's compassion that's like the eagle, and there's compassion that's even above the compassion of the eagle. And this is what he's going to explain. When you have something in Torah, the Torah compares that Hashem's behavior with the Jewish people is in a way like an eagle, in a way of compassion. This idea, whenever you have something in Torah, it's the way it is kipshutai, and then in the way it means it's simply, and then as it's elevated in a higher, more esoteric level, within all the worlds higher and higher. Movement of them. This is understood if the idea, if Torah is, the Torah says things the way they are here in this world, and it's hinting and showing us how things are above. Just like there's the compassion of the eagle in 2 ways. What does he mean 2 ways? So the idea is like this, because it says kin nesher, means Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu is talking and describing God's compassion with the Jewish people. And he says like this, that just like there's a nesher, like there's an eagle, that has compassion on its goizolov, on its young baby chicks, so too Hashem has compassion on the Jewish people. So there's Nesher and Kumoi Nesher. Because Hashem, it's not exactly the same thing. It's an example giving. So we have the level of the compassion of the eagle, and there's the compassion Kumoi Nesher, like the eagle. And that idea goes higher and higher. Oilam is beyond the worlds of Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, the worlds of separation, the world of creation, formation, and action. Ad Lo'ilam Atzilus, this idea of the two levels of compassion are even found within the world of Atzilus, which is higher, so to say, than the world of creation. The Av Sheish by Esespheres. Haru Oilam Ha'achtas, although what's the chiddush that there's the two levels of compassion within Atzilus is that although the world of Atzilus also has the 10 attributes, the 10 kelim of chesed or chachma down to malchus, nevertheless it's a world of achdus, like we've been learning in the Tanya. Ihu v'chayeu v'gameu chad, Hashem, his lights and his vessels are one in the world of Atzilus. Umikol makim gam ba yesh bechinas nesher v'umidas arachmanas Atzilus. So though it's a world of achdus, and achdus seems to indicate the concept of simplicity, oneness, and compassion is so to say. You have to have compassion on something that's lacking. There's a compassion by definition is that although it shouldn't be this way, or let's say din, judgment says otherwise, nevertheless there is compassion. So it says, there's a concept of compassion in the world of Atzilus. For instance, meaning to say, I think what he's saying over here is like this. Chesed, the idea of chesed is by definition, and the way we're going to explain when we go into the details of this Maamar, we have chesed is on the right side. It means it's its own entity. It's a concept. It's a midah. It's an attribute. The attribute of chesed is to give. It's not dependent. It needs a receptacle, like we learned in the Maamar before, that the chesed cares about, and that's really coming from his scholarless. Means in theory, hypothetically, chesed, kindness, it shouldn't really care about the receptacle or the person receiving. It just the attribute of chesed is the need to give, and that's so important how the person or the thing that's receiving receives it. The chiddush is that Eibishter, that is the kavah chesed. The uniqueness is that the attribute of Hashem of chesed, because of his scholarless, it's not just chesed of giving, but it does make a difference about the receptacle, about the person receiving. But that's I think we learned in the Sikha a few weeks ago. But that's a chiddush. But chesed on its own is just a need to give. Gevura is on its own the idea of reservations, of reserve. Rachmanis, which is tiferes, which is the torso, which means it's the body of the person, so to say, the body and here we're talking about the body of the form of God, so to say, goes all the way to Kesser, because the torso goes all the way up to the head, to the top. It's connected directly with the tainik, with the motivation of the creation. And there's a concept of compassion. And what's the definition of compassion? Although there's something lacking here, or because there's something lacking here, we have compassion. So it recognizes a lack of something and responds to that in a way of compassion. That's the attribute of compassion. But if that's the case, so the chiddush over here is that in the world of Atzilus, where everything's godliness, how's there a concept of compassion? If everything's absolute, everything's emes, everything's true. So that's what he's saying. So he's saying, although that's in the world of Atzilus, the Avsheish by Esespheres, Harei Machtus, it's all one. Nevertheless, Mikol Mokim, Gambo Yesh Bechinis Nesher V'Yimitz Rachmanas Atzilus. This is the concept of the eagle, where that's the compassion, and that's the level of compassion in Atzilus. Yesh by Bechinis Kenesher. It's not just that it has Nesher, which is the eagle. There's the Nesher and the Kenesher. Means the Nesher is the example. And then there's a higher level of compassion. The example is just an indication that when we look at that, when we make an observation of the behavior, the character of the nesher, of the eagle, we can understand God's compassion, but it's kin nesher. So even in the world of Atzilus, there's the concept of the eagle, and there's the concept of of compassion that's beyond the eagle. Means this is the compassion that's higher. It's only an indication. We only could understand the compassion from the compassion of the eagle, but it's higher than the attribute of compassion. So although it goes all the way to the highest worlds, but when we're talking about the levels of nesher and kin nesher, ideas of compassion of the eagle and compassion of like the eagle, what's greater than the eagle, is primarily talking about the way things are in this world. At the end of the day, Torah is not in heaven. Torah is in this world. Torah is Rav Magid, as the Magid teaches us, Maamar Zal, what the rabbis have taught us. Da mala ma'ila muchad means the literal translation is know what's above you. But the Magid teaches us. And what does it mean, know what's above you? Shekol hanyanim shelamayla tuluyim b'cha. That da ma l'mayla, you should know whatever's above is mimcha. You create it. Our reality creates the reaction above. So therefore, the ikar is that there's a nesher and kinesher in this world. Ubavoidus adam and nimtzalamata. And bavoidus adam and nimtzalamata, that the mimcha comes from the way we serve, the way we do things in this world, creates a reality above. Ubefrat specifically, after Matan Torah, nitna Torah l'mata v'lo b'shamayim. Especially after Matan Torah, and first of all, there was the breaking of the boundaries. So now there's a direct connection between what's happening in this world and the above world. And not only that, the Torah was now given down to this world. So it's no longer in heaven. It's not in heaven. And if the reality, when we want to understand what it means, kinesher and nesher, the idea of like the compassion of the eagle, and the compassion of the eagle, we have to analyze it in this world, and what it means in avoda. He adds that, the Rebbe. The kol hagavoy yoser yored lamata yoser. Like we learned, the rule of thumb is that when we want to understand something, we know that the higher something is, it falls low. The ability for something to go to even to a low point is a sign of how high it is. Hainu, which means say, when you want to find the highest level of Torah, you can't say that really Torah is a spiritual existence, a spiritual reality, a spiritual connection. Nor of us, that the idea is that because God gave us the Torah in this world, so when we do it, we do a mitzvah here. No. The highest level of Torah comes down specifically here. I mean, the Rebbe adds to this idea what it means, kol hagavoya b'yoser yored lamata yoser. Not just that it's able to have an effect lower, but its essence is lower. That's the Rebbe's adding over here. And because something that's so high can come low, not just like when you say you have a very strong light that goes further, but its source of the light is at the source still. The question is if you can have a light, let's say you have these flashlights that can go so far, and you have a strong flashlight to go even further. So, but it still doesn't. The actual light itself is in its origin. The question is, how strong is the light? How far could it go? So then there's no proof that we're talking about that the Iker Torah, the main part of Torah is in this world. You're just saying that Torah is so high, it could go so low, even be found in the mundane and the laws of details of Gashmis and physicality. But here the Rebbe is saying it even further. That the idea of Kol HaGavoy Yored Yoser, Yored Lamata Yoser, he explains, Hainu, what does that mean? The Ini Nachi Nailish B'tar Nim Tzedaf Lamata. It's not that it has an effect so far down, but that its essence is found further down. The highest levels of Torah are found in this world. And that's the Chiddush. That something that's so high is able to be found, that its Iker should be found here. Like Iker Shechina B'tachtoinu. Mizem move on. And it's not such a far concept, because the whole point, the inspiration for creation and Torah comes, the Jewish people that Olav Machshava become before even Torah, like this is Davar B'nai Yisrael, that the Jewish people come before Torah, was the inspiration for Torah at its core, was that there should be the mitzvahs here in this world. We then moving from this understood, Gam B'inyan HaNesher, when it comes about the Nesher, and we're talking about the eagle, Shepasek Zeh Koil Beis HaKtzavis, we find two extremes when it comes to the eagle. The harachim machiel yoinim, the highest level of compassion. That the highest level of compassion, that how do we understand compassion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world on the Neshamas Yisrael is specifically from the Nesher, from a Nesher. Now, then we're going to go into the Nesher, not even a kosher animal. The eagle is not a kosher bird. From the Nesher, we understand the level of compassion that it's able to, from this is an indication and a lesson of what is the highest level of compassion of Hashem for the Jewish people. Because the Pasuk describes, not just that there's, the Pasuk describes in detail, and Rashi goes into detail of the behavior of the Nesher, and that's how Kadosh Baruch Hu works with the Jewish people. Mati v'lei mati, he's there, he's not there, the protectivism, to hold it even above his wings. No other bird has that kind of strength. So now he's going to explain. For Ininu, the idea is like this. The Nechsiv, it says, Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei, the three things he didn't understand. And one of them he says is Derech HaNesher B'Shamayim, the idea of the Nesher in heaven. What does he mean he doesn't understand? What Shlomo Melech was wondering about the eagle Is eich yesh b'nei nesher shu oif tameh b'merkav al. Like I said, the nesher goes all the way to a non-kosher animal. How is it that that one of the images of the animals on the chariot is a non-kosher bird? So the question is, that's the explanation. He says in 10, he quotes it as the Arizal. That the Arizal quotes it, that Shlomo Melch's wonder about the eagle was not about the character of the eagle, but what's the eagle doing on the Merkava? It's not a kosher animal. What's the obvious question? The other non-kosher animals on the Merkava, there's the lion. It's Tzarech L'havim. Shayesh Merkava Gam Pnei Arya V'al Yamin. And there's two questions here. One is, there's another non-kosher animal. Why isn't Shlomo Melch disturbed about that? Which is the lion. And it's the Yamin, it's on the right side, which is the more strong side. The kosher animal, which is the Shiur, is on the left side. Shu Chayatame. The lion is a non-kosher animal, it's an impure animal. Madua Hifli ala Nesher Dafka. Why was Shlomo Melch concerned about the eagle versus the lion? The answer is, like I said before, based on what? The idea that there could be an idea of the lion that represents, yes, it's right, but it's its own character. It's the character of the concept of chesed that's in the right side. It's the right, like the right hand with all its strength. It's not the ikr guf. It's not the main part of the body. It's not the kavam tzoi. We know that balance is not just an ability to balance. A balance goes the kavam tzoi, the middle part is where the emes is where Tiferes is, Yaakov, Moshe. That's all that line, the torso going all the way up to the head, all the way down to the sod, an expansion of the thighs and the feet. So here the question is not that Shlomo is wondering that how could there be an idea of a non-kosher animal. He understands, and the line represents something that's in the side of chesed, but it's its own category. Yes, it's the right hand, but the right side, but it's its own category. It's chesed, the idea to give. What Shlomo was wondering, how could the non-kosher animal be in the kavam tzoi, the ikr guf, that the main representation of, so to say, the form is a non-kosher animal. That's why Moshe Shlomo asks, on the eagle. The fact that the line's on the right side, the pnei arya should be markava hem bekavi yamin ha'oila b'chitzayin is a keslevad. Because it's not the ikr guf, it's not the torso, so it's a concept. It only reaches what we call the chitzayin a keser. Just like there's the non-kosher animals and the whole creation comes from chitzayin a keser. Chitzayin a keser means the external. It's a component. But when we get to like Yaakov, the reason Yaakov's ability, which is the kahav rachmanis, the concept of compassion, is that it reaches from the highest point of the keser of the crown, which is the pleasure, which is the motivation for everything. The fact that there's a lot of external things. So one of the components of this external is the lion, which is on the right side, because it only reaches external. But how could the nesher reach all the way to Pnimis HaKeser, the innermost depth of the Eibishter, Atik Yomin, right? So therefore, it's not so wondrous about the lion. When we're talking about the eagle, which is a non-kosher bird, which is in the middle of the torso, Tferes, that reaches all the way to the core point. How can it be represented by non-kosher animal? Therefore, Shlomo has an extreme question. How could the ikr, desire, tainug, the pneumius of keser, be represented by non-kosher animal? So he answers like this. The answer is that that's the whole point. Ubirian ideas. Because compassion. Again, compassion is not a third element. Compassion is the element. The idea of Tiferes, of beauty. What's so powerful about Tiferes? Why is Tiferes such an important midah, especially in Chassidus, right? We talk about Tiferes, the Rebbe Marash on Beis ear. Tiferes is not just the ability to have balance. Balance it's as an entity on its own. Balance is not just a combination that you're not always going to one way. Chesed, the famous the Vort of the Alter Rebbe, when he talks about it, I was talking with someone on Shabbos. He talks about Rebbe Yosef ben Kisma, the famous beautiful Vort in Shabbos told us that Rebbe Yosef ben Kisma, that Reb Chanina ben Tradion goes to visit Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma before Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma dies. Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma had a relationship with the Romans. Reb Chanina ben Tradion was eventually murdered by the Romans, and he's told by Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma he's going to be murdered by the Romans for teaching Torah. So what does Reb Chanina ben Tradion ask the Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma? What's going to be with me? So what do you mean, what's going to be with me? So he said, what's Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma answers him, Klum ma'aseh bo b'li yadecha. What have you done? The Alter Rebbe says, what do you mean, what have you done? He's just about, you're telling him he's going to be burnt on this, he's going to be murdered by the Romans for teaching Torah. His whole life is Torah. How could you ask him a question, what have you done? Have you done anything that's important? Tell me a story about yourself. And Rabbi Chanina ben Tradion answers that he once had monies that were mixed, and he gave it all to tzedakah. Monies that were part with loan, part with money for Purim, whatever it was, and he didn't want to. He was scared that there'd be some money that would be mismanaged. He gave it all to tzedakah. So he says, if that's the case, then I should be so fortunate to have your reward in heaven. Why? What did this story answer everything? Because what the story was, it showed that he didn't. The Alter Rebbe says that if from this story we learn that Rebbe Chanina ben Tradion was a true person. If he would just be a person that was a studious person, it's not a big deal that he's dying for his beliefs. But the fact that he had a balance it doesn't just mean that he has two sides to him. It showed who he was in everything. It elevated his entire personality from being a person that could have been an extreme person to one side, which, like the Alter Rebbe describes, the studious persons from the Tzad Gvura. The very fact that in other things he showed he had a broadness means that he's a whole different entity. So compassion is not just a balance of two things. It's an entire different entity. And that's why he says, the ability to have compassion, that is the core, that's the emes of everything, which is an amazing thing, because it means to say that chesed, who says always give, the judgment says, 1 second, is the person worthy? The seemingly emes should be with either chesed or gvura. And then no, where's emes? Midas Yaakov is midah of emes is rachmanis. It's compassion. The ability to have compassion, notwithstanding, that's not perfect. The lack of perfection, that's where emes is. Not in the extreme of something, either chesed that we never judge, we just give, or the idea of din where there's right and wrong. Compassion says, I recognize there's a problem, and nevertheless there's compassion, and that's where emes is. And that's where it's mushreshes, it's rooted in the primus keser, in the essence of God. The fikach, therefore it falls so low. The nesher, like it's brought down in Torah. The nesher means like a bird that dives down, falls down. The nafil mean darge ad life tameh. It's so not judgmental. They could even be found. It's found at the end in the physical form in this world in a non-kosher animal. It could even reach a place where there's no holiness. So much so it's not even kosher. That's how the pasuk continues. Meaning to say, it starts off saying Yimtze'eo Beretz Midbar. That before that says Kechelek Vayamai. Who are you? What is a Jew? A Jew is a portion of Hashem, like we learned in this morning in the Torah. Nevertheless, Yimtze'eo Beretz Midbar. You found in the desert means you've lost your way. As an neshama comes into the goof, what happened to you? And the response to that is Kinesher Yair Kinoi. That God has compassion, notwithstanding that you found in the desert. The Midbar Hu Makom Asher Lo Yoshev Adam Sham. What are you doing in the midbar? Midbar is not a place for a person. Hainu, what does it mean not a place for a person? God, godliness doesn't belong in the desert. The form of man that he sees on the image of the Merkava. And again, like the Alter Rebbe says in the Maamar this morning, that this is a very similar Maamar based on seemingly the ideas the Alter Rebbe says in the Likutei Torah, that this is the way that things are in Golus. And therefore, and what happens? That the Adam is in the midbar, although he shouldn't be in the midbar. And therefore, the Jewish people don't belong in the midbar, who are called Adam. Adam Elelion, like Hashem, who doesn't belong in the midbar. Everyone has a portion of godliness within them, like it says in Tanya. And like the pasuk says before that, so the whole pasuk is the whole kriya today is one long conversation. Starting off is, who are you? You're chelik havaya. Nevertheless, you're found in the desert. What are you doing in the desert? You shouldn't be in the desert. That's outside of the place of kedusha. And you're chelik alikai. Ki chelik havaya. It says even more than that. The Rebbe says. Not only don't you belong to live there, Yoshev means a yeshiva, to be rested there, but you shouldn't even be passing through the desert. A Jewish person should have any connection to the desert, seemingly. That's the question. You say, oh, Beretz Midbar. Nevertheless, the Torah continues. The pasuk continues, Kinesha Yari Kinoi. That even though that you're in the midbar, the Nesher, the Rachmanis is able to find you there. And how does it find you? Manifest in the non-kosher animal. He says, I think we'll go one more. This is long. We'll stop here because the next part he goes into Chiddush. It's a beautiful word. That the idea is Yimtze'eyu Beretz Midbar. The Chiddush with the Rebbe and Selvier, so just to give a little spoiler to the end of the Maamar, is what is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is when someone thinks that you lost something, it's lost. Usually, most people get excited when you have a mitzvah. Mitzvah means you find something new that you didn't think you would have. The Eibusha thought he lost this in the desert, and he realizes that Yimtze'eyu Beretz Midbar, that he found this in the desert. He found the mitzvah, and therefore we start to learn the value. Although a person shouldn't be in the desert, sometimes your whole value is because you're in the desert. To be continued, Yashar Koich. Thank you for joining. Hopefully, we can finish it tomorrow. We should be able to finish the Maamar.